Welcome back. Welcome back. By the way, I'm going to introduce this. I'll figure out a way to do this, but I'm supposed to be taking attendance. Who's here? Raise your hand if you're here. Okay, I did. Yeah, welcome back. Today is August 25th. Now, before I introduce, today's what happened on this date in history, in U.S. history, there are certain days that, jump out at years that we all kind of are aware of something that happened that year. So if I say, what happened in 1776, everybody knows that that's the year that David Hume died. Well, it is the year that David Hume died, but it's also the year of the the Declaration of Independence. Well, in church history, there are certain years like that as well. I mean, if I say 1517, that's the year that the Reformation started. That's the year that Luther tacked up the 95 Thesis. If I say 1054, that's the year of the split between the East and the West Church. Everybody should know that. And so this is one of those days. This is one of those years, because it was on this date in 325 AD. Anyone? Council of Nicaea started. The Council of Nicaea started on this date in 325 AD. And the Council of Nicaea is significant for a number of reasons. First of all, it's technically the second church council, but it's the first. The first church council is in Acts chapter 15, this is the second church council, but it's the first unified, ecumenical, however they call it, church council called by the Christian community at that time. It's considered the first church council of that nature. And the reason they got together is because now, of course, in the political world, Christianity had not been persecution against Christianity had just been outlawed like 10 or 12 years previously by Constantine, the newly converted Roman emperor. Christianity doesn't become the legal religion of Rome for another 10 or 50 years or something like that. But persecution has been outlawed. Okay, so you can't persecute Christians. So there's this guy wandering around the church somewhere, I don't know where, but his name is Arius. Arius is looking at the Bible, looking at the text, and he said, I'm having a hard time buying this idea that Jesus is divine, that Jesus is God. And for a number of reasons, Father, Son is a subordinate position and all kinds of other things. And so he start teaching this idea that Jesus is a created, there's variations, Jesus is a created being, Jesus is less than God, that God the Father is God, everything else is not God. Okay, so, very high, very important, but not quite God. And to the point where today we refer to that as Arianism. Okay, so every once in a while, and it's still a battle that's being fought. Okay, that's still, there's still people out there, there's still beliefs and religious systems where Mormonism, I believe, is one of them, where Jesus is a great guy. Don't get me wrong, he's a great guy, but he's not God. Okay, and so the Council of Nicaea was called by, it was presided over by Constantine. He was kind of sort of there. I don't know how much of the actual discussions he was in on, but he was kind of wanted his, this was really like tearing apart the church. It really was. And there were Arian believers, and there were Arian churches, Arian bishops, and there were Trinitarian bishops. Or at least I don't know if they were called Trinitarian at the time, but who believed that Jesus was divine, that Jesus and God were co-equal, all that. And so what they did was they got together, they discussed it, and they came up with what was called the Nicene Creed, which is something most of you are probably familiar with. You've read or heard the Nicene Creed. It is, we believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and of all things visible and invisible, and in one Lord Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the only begotten of the Father before all ages, light of light, true God of true God, begotten, not made, of one essence with the Father. This is kind of that's the one essence. The same thing. With the Father, by whom all things were made, who for us men and for our salvation came down from heaven and was incarnate of the Holy Spirit and the Virgin Mary, became man, and he was crucified for us under Pontius Pilate and suffered and was buried. And the third day he rose again according to the Scriptures and ascended into heaven and sits at the right hand of the Father, and he shall come again with glory to judge the living and the dead, whose kingdom shall have no end, and in the Holy Spirit. So that was the Nicene Creed that came out in AD 325, which settled the matter as much as it said, okay, this is the official position of the church. This is what is the truth, and if you don't believe that, then you're a heretic. Now, it's interesting that one of the guys, he's not a major player at the Council of Nicaea, but there is a guy wandering around there named Athanasius, who is another great leader of the early church, 4th century church. Athanasius contra mundum, Athanasius against the world. One of my heroes, simply because this guy was excommunicated 5 times. That's my goal in life. I want to get excommunicated 5 times. And one of the reasons why he kept getting excommunicated is because Arians would get in control, and they would say, well, you're clearly not an Arian. And so he would get kicked out of the church, and then they would get beaten back, and he would be brought back in, and all kinds of various things. However, people started criticizing, and they still criticize the Nicene Creed, but kind of pointed out that, well, there's very little spoken in the Nicene Creed about the Holy Spirit. What about the Holy Spirit? And so about 50 years later, 55 years later, 56, in Constantinople, there was another council where they revised the Nicene Creed and added the paragraph, and we believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life, who proceeds from the Father, who with the Father and the Son together is worshipped and glorified, who spoke by the prophets in one holy, Catholic, and apostolic church. Keep in mind there, Catholic just means universal at that time. We were all Catholics. Yeah. And I acknowledge one baptism for the remission of sins. I look for the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come. Amen. And so nowadays, and it's actually been revised since then. I mean, it's not scripture, so people go in and periodically change a word here and there. But usually when people talk about the Nicene Creed, they're talking about the Nicene Creed as revised at the Council of Constantinople. It's one of those hair-splitting sort of things that people like me get a kick out of. But that, and this is still a significant statement. Okay, I mean, in the last deacon meeting we were talking about the Nicene Creed. Okay, yeah, it was just sort of a. Recited in church sometime? Well, maybe, I don't know. And it's some use it as, say, okay, what was, and we were kind of trying to figure out, okay, so what is the baseline for agreement with other churches? Like, where do we draw the line? Is it the Nicene Creed? And when you talk about the Nicene Creed, basically the big deal about the Nicene Creed is it's Trinitarianism, the idea that the God is 3 in 1. Okay, so that's kind of the big deal with the Nicene Creed. Okay, it's not the same as the Apostles' Creed. That was earlier, although they're kind of moving along the same sort of trajectory. So nowadays you'll hear some about the Apostles' Creed, but the Apostles' Creed doesn't deal with the Trinitarianism angle at all. But so today, again, like I said, we still talk about the Nicene Creed. There are people still writing books about the Nicene Creed. As far as, what do you believe in terms of who Jesus is? Like, well, do you believe the Nicene Creed? Okay, then that's one way to do that. So that was a big deal. And just because I'm that kind of guy, for those who want a copy of the actual Nicene Creed, something to post up on your wall. Yeah, a lot of your mainline Protestant churches do say either this, the Apostles' Creed. Yeah, I don't know about the paper. I mean, I ran out of the regular paper and grabbed some other paper, and then I'm not sure what this is, but it's so. But the and there are still a lot of different creeds and beliefs and statements of faith and things out there that churches have been trying to do forever tried to distill and say, okay, here's what we believe. Okay, so I mean, there's the if you're the Council of Dort, if you're the Reformed persuasion, there's the Schleitheim Confession. If you're Anabaptist, there's what else is there? There's the Baptist Faith and Message. If you're a Southern Baptist, there's the New Hampshire Baptist Confession. If you're a Reformed Baptist, there's all kinds of different ones. But the Nicene Creed is kind of the original. It's sort of the baseline one. But that's it on the Nicene Creed. Okay, doesn't have much to do with Samuel, but this is why I do this. It was also on this date in 1835, the Great Moon Hoax. Anybody remember that? No. The Guardian newspaper published a series of 6 stories about the discovery. That's just front page stuff about the discovery of men on the moon, little bat boys and all of that kind of stuff. And it was really huge. It was a big deal in 1835. In 1912, the Kuomintang was created. The Kuomintang. This is the Chinese Nationalist Party. The Chinese Nationalist Party, which ultimately was forced out of China and created what is now called Taiwan, and then lost power in Taiwan and is now sort of, it's a weird thing, but it all kind of started on this date in 1912. In 1932, Amelia Earhart completed her transcontinental flight, the first by a woman, a solo transcontinental flight started in England and flew and landed in New Jersey. In 1945, the missionary John Birch was executed. Has anybody ever heard of John Birch? Exactly. It's the society that became known as the John Birch Society. They're not linked. Okay, John Birch did not create the John Birch Society. Okay, the John Birch Society, whatever name it was beforehand, thought, hey, here's a great guy. He's an American missionary killed by the communists. We're an anti-communist group. Let's take his name and call it the John Birch Society, which I believe is still around. I have not, they were much bigger. I think their heyday was like in the 60s and 70s. But they are still around, I think. But he was executed on this date in 1945. And finally, today, I should ask everybody to take out their purses and show me something. Today is Monty Hall's birthday. Monty Hall, let's make a deal. So let's make a deal and talk about 1 Samuel. See what I did there? How's that for a smooth transition? All right. 1 Samuel 5 and 6. So today's topic is, I'm calling it the return of the lost ark. I was trying to figure out a way to get Raiders in there, but I thought I might as well. There's probably a copyright loss in there somewhere or something. We started last week talking about the ark narrative. All right, so when we last left our heroes, if you remember that chapters 4 through 6 of 1 Samuel is often referred to as the ark narrative. Some think it's a separate story. I don't. I think it's just part of the story. It just happens to fit a nice narrative arc. ARC arc, not ARK arc, but it's there's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end. One of the reasons why people think that it's not is because Samuel's not involved, and perhaps that reason is just to kind of indicate that Eli is still in charge. We find out during this event, Eli is still in charge, and they're transitioning into the era where Samuel is, in fact, the number one guy. And so Samuel has been called, and then we go to this ark story where the Israelites are fighting the Philistines. The Philistines are like the bad guys through all of Samuel. Constantly turn around. You're always fighting the Philistines, just over and over and over again. And there are some weird relationships there as well. David actually goes and lives with the Philistines for a while, but we'll get to that when we talk about that oddness. Then. So they go to fight the Philistines. The Israelites are fighting the Philistines, and they get into a battle, and they lose. Okay, they lose. The Bible tells us 4,000 people die. I'm like, oh, this is terrible. What did we do wrong? And the elders of Israel. So I guess it's a good thing that they figured out something was not right. Something was not right. So they get together and they say, well, you know what's missing is the ark. We don't have the ark with us. And I pointed out that that's not as crazy an idea as it sounds, because the ark had been present at Jericho. The ark had been present when they crossed the Jordan River. The ark had been present when they were wandering the wilderness. So seeing the ark and following the ark, letting the ark lead as an indication that that is the presence of God, that's, is not that outlandish an idea. However, that wasn't the solution to the problem. It's one of these things that, and there are several of these things through the Bible. You'll see that people come up with that turn out to be like really bad ideas. In hindsight, this was not a good idea. Okay, and so they bring the Ark of the Covenant, and the Ark of the Covenant shows up on the battle, and everybody gets all excited about it. Yay! The Ark is here. God is here with us. They were equating that the presence of the Ark of the Covenant was equal the presence of God and support for their endeavor. And so the battle, and the noise is so great that the ground rumbled. So the noise is so great that the Philistines hear it. And they're going, whoa, what's going on here? And the Philistines indicate, hear what's going on. And the Philistines kind of repeat, how David, or how the writer knows this, I don't know, but perhaps it's just from the later on when David is hanging with the Philistines later. Maybe he talks to somebody who's telling, hey, I remember that time we did, perhaps that's where the source of that particular story comes from. But they say, well, listen, the Philistines are talking amongst themselves, and they say, listen, we need to up our game here, because if we don't, we're going to be servants of the Hebrews, just like they've been our servants for the past several years, and we don't want that to happen. And so the Philistines, figure they're kind of in a do or die moment. They get up and they beat the Hebrews again, so much so that they not only do they kill 30,000 foot soldiers, as the text tells us, they actually capture the ark. And as well, among the 30,000 people that die are Hophni and Phinehas, Eli's two sons. And if you remember, the sign to Eli that your time is up is going to be that your sons are going to die on the same day. And that's exactly what happens. So the guy comes back, tells Eli, Eli falls over and dies. And next thing you know, it's the Eli's daughter-in-law has a child, and she names the child Ichabod, for the glory has departed. The glory has departed from Israel. Okay, so it says when we last left our heroes, the ark had been captured by the Philistines, and then of course we know the Philistines went and put it in a warehouse in Washington D.C., and that was the last. Oh no, I'm sorry. And that's it. And I pointed out that this was a very dark day for Israel. Okay, this was a very dark day for Israel. We don't pause a lot sometimes when we think about these stories, and we just kind of blast into the next thing. And when the woman names the child Ichabod, I mean that's a significant moment. That's kind of whoa. It says that everybody went to their tent. Okay, everybody which means they went home. They just left. So everybody just left. They said, okay, we're not stop fighting this battle anymore. We're just going home. Okay, the glory has departed. The God who carried us through the wilderness, the God who carried us over the Jordan River, the God who carried us around the walls of Jericho is gone. We're out of here. We're done. This is it. It's a very dark day for Israel, right? Now now Samuel is still around somewhere. We don't know where. He's not involved in this story. Okay, Samuel is still around somewhere. But now we kind of switch to kind of tell the story of what happened to the ark. What happened to the ark? And again, remember, the ark is that box. It's a box. It's on poles. Okay, you're supposed to carry it. I'm just going to assert that. Trust me, you're supposed to carry it. It's on poles. There's these cherubim, gold creature things over the top, and inside the ark is Aaron's rod that budded, copies of the law or the Ten Commandments, and the jar of manna. So there's something inside the box. Okay, so you have this stuff that's inside the box, and now it's been captured by the Philistines. Okay, A side note. Now and we're going to. This actually is asserted later. It's just stated later. But the Philistines have 5 major cities. They have 5 capital cities. Okay, and those 5 capital cities are Ashdod, Ashdod, Gath, Gath, Ekron, Ekron, Ashkelon, Ashkelon, and Gaza. Remember, I told you that the Philistines are their area is the area that we would now correspond with the Gaza Strip. So you can draw your own conclusion again about the ongoing conflict between that area and the Israelites. Go ahead. But so there are these 5 major cities. Okay, everybody's got that. So the Philistines take the ark to Ashdod. Let me pick this up here. Let me find my place. I am in 1 Samuel 5, beginning with verse 1. After the Philistines had captured the ark of God, they took it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. Then they carried the ark into Dagon's temple and set it beside Dagon. Okay? The Philistines take the ark to Ashdod and put it in Dagon's temple, or Dagon. I think Dagon is how it's pronounced. I mean, it's a Semitic word, but Dagon is a god. Some have suggested that it was like a fish god, which may or may not be true. We don't really, and I don't really think it's important to get into the details, worship and grain and all of that. Basically, it's a statue of this god, and we know from later events that this statue has a head, and we know that this statue has hands. Hold that thought. Okay, we know that. All right. So they put the ark inside the temple, near or next to the statue of Dagon. Now the ark itself is not that big. Okay, it's I don't know, it's by yay big, by yay long, by it isn't a huge box, and so putting it in the temple. Putting it in Dagon's temple is the Philistine way of showing who's boss. Okay, so you've got this box and you've got the god Dagon kind of standing over it, sort of like showing who's, hey, we beat you guys. Our God beat your God. Our God is stronger than your God. So it's kind of there, that's what else are you going to do with the thing, right? I know, warehouse in Washington, D.C. What else are you going to do with it? So it's there at the foot, in a subservient position in a location a little lower than his statue. Okay, a little lower than his statue. Let's see. When the people of Ashdod rose early the next day, there was Dagon fallen on his face on the ground before the ark of the Lord. To me, this whole story, this chapters 5 and 6, there's sort of, maybe it's just my weirdness. There's sort of a humorous approach to this. It's kind of funny. Again, a lot of people are hurt and all that, and I get that. Time plus equals comedy or something. But they very proudly put the ark there. Yay, yay, Dagon, yay, Dagon. And then the next morning they go walking in, and there's Dagon falling over. This is kind of unusual. It's like, how did that happen? Did anybody feel the ground shake? Is anybody running in there? Big animals crawling around? Mice chewed about? I don't know. So it says, so they took Dagon and put him back in his place. Kind of an interesting thing, which is, again, a little higher than the Ark of the Covenant, a little higher than that Hebrew God we just beat. Okay? They took Dagon and put him back in his place, but the following morning when they rose, there was Dagon fallen on his face on the ground before the ark of the Lord. The same thing, except his head and his hands had been broken off. And that phrase could actually be translated cut off as well. So his head and his hands were broken. Okay, so now it's not quite as easy for them to just put it back up again. Early in the morning, the people find the statue face down before the ark. They put him back in his place. Okay, so it's like, the interesting thing is of who's controlling who here. Okay, so it's that the people have to put the God back where he belongs. And it's like, shouldn't the God be, whatever. So they put the God back in his place. The morning after that, they find the statue again face down, but this time with the statue's head and hands broken, cut off. Okay, this was clearly a symbol. It meant something. at the time. In 2 Samuel 4, I'm going to jump ahead to a story. There's a couple of guys are going to come to David and tell him that they killed Ishbosheth, who is the king of Israel. He's Saul's son, and he's the king of the northern kingdom. And this is not the kind of thing that you go and tell David, because he doesn't deal well with this, or he doesn't brook this kind of thing. And so he kills them. He has them killed, and then he cuts off their heads and their hands to kind of point out, okay, I will, to kind of show my repudiation of this particular act. And that's kind of what he was doing. It's just sort of a, showing, hey, nothing to do with you. Okay. So they're like, whoa, this is serious. This is 2 days in a row that we've had this problem, and now it's getting worse. And who knows if we have a third day, what it's going to be like. His head and his hands had been broken off and were lying on the threshold. Only his body remained. That is why to this day neither the priests of Dagon nor any others who enter Dagon's temple at Ashdod step on the threshold. It's an interesting side note that he fell across the threshold, and so now nobody steps on the threshold. So you think about that. You think about that that tradition that they have. Like, well, why don't you step on a threshold? Well, you remember the time that ark was here and kept falling down? It's kind of recalling this bad period in Dagon's life, but they do it anyway. It's a kind of my note in my Bible on this is an Old Testament fun fact. Okay, so the writer is just throwing that in there. Okay, hey, they don't do that anymore. This is how, kind of showing the superstition of these people as well. Okay. The Lord's hand was heavy I'm in verse 6. The Lord's hand was heavy on the people of Ashdod and its vicinity. He brought devastation on them and afflicted them with tumors. Okay. Now, if you have an NIV, you'll see that there's some other variations. Again, we talked about in the first day the different textual variants, the Septuagint and all. And one of the Septuagint and the Vulgate translate this: tumors and rats appeared in their land, and there was death and destruction throughout the city. So let's see. The people of Ashdod began experiencing tumors and perhaps rats. Okay. So now this is under the assumption that what they're experiencing is something similar to what we would call the bubonic plague. Okay. And the bubonic plague, again, it's still around. It has not been eradicated. But it has to do with rats and the fleas that the rats carry. And if you get the bubonic plague, you get the boils, or buboes, they're called, and it's kind of a real bad scene. Now, what exactly these guys were getting inflicted with, we don't really know. There's been all kinds of interesting discussions. I mean, based on the King James translation, that's 1611, it's thought to have been like hemorrhoids, that it was, which is an interesting picture. I mean, just a bunch of the entire population dealing with hemorrhoids because of this, or tumors, or just huge boils or something. But there was some physical manifestation that they were having. Okay, clearly some plague of some sort was happening that wasn't happening before we put that ark in our temple. Okay, so clearly something has gone wrong here. When the people of Ashdod saw what was happening, they said, "The ark of the God of Israel must not stay here with us, because his hand is heavy on us and on Dagon our God." Okay, so they realize here, I mean, whether they admit it or not, that they realize that the power that follows the ark is greater than the power of their God Dagon. The power of Yahweh, the Hebrew God, is more powerful. That we don't want to put these two in the same room. Okay, and so we need to get this ark out of here. Okay, so they called together all the rulers of the Philistines and asked them, "What shall we do with the ark of the God of Israel?" Now, I don't think the people of Ashdod really cared what they did, as long as they got it out of our. I don't care what you do with it; just get it out of our particular, room, out of our city. So we're not dealing with these tumors. We're not dealing with these boils, hemorrhoids, rats, whatever this bad thing is. Let's not do it. Let's just get rid of it. So the ark of the God of Israel must not stay here. So they called together all the rulers, and what should we do? They answered, have the ark of the God of Israel moved to Gath. Okay, again, this is the second of the major cities. Gath will come back to visit later on because one of the proud hometown heroes of this town is Goliath. Okay, but so let's bring it to Gath. Okay, and I'm sure the people of Gath are thinking, oh, this can't be true. This isn't true. No. So they moved the ark of the God to Israel. But after they had moved it, the Lord's hand was against that city, throwing it into a great panic. He inflicted the people of the city, both old and young, with an outbreak of tumors. Again, same thing. I'm guessing there was a council meeting. There's something. So they sent the ark to the ark of God to Ekron. Now, notice that they just sent it. There doesn't appear to be a discussion. It does say, hey, get it out of here. Just go to Ekron. Now, the interesting thing about Ekron is the closest of the 5 cities to Israel. Okay? It's the closest of the 5 cities to Israel. It says, get it out of here. Send it to Ekron. As the ark of God was entering Ekron, word travels fast. Now, there's no internet here, but word travels fast. As the ark of God was entering Ekron, the people of Ekron cried out, they brought the ark of the God of Israel around to us to kill us and our people. So it's interesting that this has now caused some internal division among the Philistines. Okay, it's like, well, you guys you're sending this to us because you want to kill us. Okay, I don't want, we don't want this here. So they called together all the rulers of the Philistines and said, send the ark of the God of Israel away. Let it go back to its own place, or it will kill us and our people. Okay? So they've recognized that, taking this ark was not a good idea. Okay? This is not working out the way we thought it was going to work out. Okay, so the people of Ashdod, let me see, where am I? The people of Ashdod began experiencing tumors and perhaps rats. The people of Ashdod have the ark moved to the city of Gath, home of Goliath. The people of Gath send the ark to Ekron. Ekron wants nothing to do with it and demands the ark's return to Israel. Okay, we gotta get this thing out of here. Okay, so they called together and said, "Let it go back to its own place, or it will kill us." For death had filled the city with panic. God's hand was very heavy on it. Those who did not die were afflicted with heaven, and the outcry of the city went up to heaven. I think that's an interesting phrase here. It's kind of like, okay, so is the Lord answering their prayer to get it out of there? I don't know. But it says in verse 1 of chapter 6, when the ark of the Lord had been in the Philistine territory 7 months, okay, so that's a lot of rats and tumors and buboes and hemorrhoids or whatever it was actually. The Philistines called for the priests and the diviners and said, what shall we do with the ark of the Lord? Okay, so they bring in their priests. Now, these are Philistine priests. These are Dagon's priests. Now, Dagon's priests are not going to say, well, let's just bring it back to Dagon's temple. No. Okay, they realize that they don't want this thing anymore. Okay, because they realize that the power of God that follows this ark is just not something that they can deal with. Okay. What should we do with the ark of the Lord? Tell us, how should we send it back to its place? Okay, tell us how. Okay, so they know this is careful. Don't mess with this. Okay, we gotta have a specific plan of getting rid of this thing. Okay, we can't just, this isn't something that they can just go set it on somebody's door and ring the doorbell and run. Okay, here's your ark back, kind of thing, right? They've got to, they want to be very careful because we don't want to get this God any madder at us than he already is. Okay? Now, I'm wondering what's going on in Israel at this time. If you think about that, it's like the ark is gone. It's an existential crisis for the Israelites. The glory has departed. And meanwhile, the glory is over there wreaking havoc in Philistia. So I don't know whether there's any messages going back and forth. That's kind of an interesting things I want to know when I get to heaven. Okay, I want to find out. Okay, was there any communication between Philistia and you guys? I mean, anybody telling stories about what was going on? I don't know. So they answered. Now these are the diviners and the priests. Okay. Now here's the thing. They have no idea what they're talking about. Okay. They're just thinking, okay, based on the way we do business with our God, this is what you should do. Okay? So again, they're just, it's sort of like, have you ever, when I got married, I thought that the fact that I don't have a very sophisticated palate, which basically means I'll eat just about anything. Okay? And I thought that would be a plus. Yeah, I thought that would be, oh well, my wife, if she chooses to, can make me whatever she wants, and I'll be happy with it. Well, I found out, wisdom of 33 years married, that's not the slam dunk help that you think it is, because then you get into this conversation, and I know no one's ever had this conversation, only me. What do you want for dinner? I don't care, whatever you want. No, what do you want? Oh, what do you want? What do you want? Oh, I'm fine with that. Whatever you want to make. I know no one else has ever had that conversation. And so at some point I realized, okay, she doesn't care, so I need to choose something. And I have to do it convincingly. Oh, I want that one. That one. So that's me choosing the dinner choice for the night. And usually it comes down to, are we going to go to this restaurant or that restaurant? But it's like kind of thing. But it's choose boldly. Okay. Who is it? Sin boldly. Who did that? Who said that? It was Martin Luther. Sin boldly, kind of thing. Just get in there and this is what these guys are doing. They have no idea what they're talking about, but they go, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to do, and it'll work. Okay, and so they say. So now we're going to go home, and on the way home, I'm going to say, where do you want to go? And she said, I don't know. Where do you want to go? And then I'll pick something. I'll say, let's go here. And now she's just going to say, do you really think that? See, that's the trouble with this class. I give away too many of my secrets. No, just kidding. She already knows that. Right there? You're right. She's writing them all down. So they answered, if you return the ark of the God of Israel, do not send it back to him without a gift. By all means, send a guilt offering to him. Okay, a guilt offering. Now again, what the Philistines mean by a guilt offering and what the Hebrews mean by a guilt offering may or may not be the same thing. Now, a guilt offering in the Bible to the Hebrews is in Leviticus chapter 5, and I'll just read it just because it's kind of interesting. In Leviticus 5:14. Where to go? Thought I had this all lined up. The Lord said to Moses, and this is interesting because it is technically the right thing. When anyone is unfaithful to the Lord by sinning unintentionally in regard to any of the Lord's holy things, like the ark, they are to bring to the Lord as a penalty a ram from the flock, one without defect of the proper value in silver, according to the sanctuary shekel. It is a guilt offering. Okay? But they have the definition. This requires a guilt offering, but what they're offering is not correct. And this is an interesting thing here. So let's see, where is it? If you return without a gift, by all means send. Then you will be healed, and you will know, and you will know why his hand has not been lifted from you. Okay, this is per their thinking. The Philistines asked, what guilt offering should we send to him? Well, according to Leviticus, it should have been a ram from the flock and all that, right? They said, well, 5 gold tumors and 5 gold rats. Okay, so which I think is just, so whatever the manifestation of the disease was, make 5 gold representations of it and 5 gold rats. This is why, going back, they think that it's kind of a plague thing, the bubonic plague, because the rats, and why would you make rats, and all that kind of stuff. So, which is kind of an interest. Now, I'm wondering how big these are. I mean, are they lice? How big is an Israeli rat? I don't know, or a Philistine rat. How big is is it huge? I mean, is it I don't know. But so they create these 5 gold rats and 5 gold tumors. According to the number of the Philistine rulers, each city has its own ruler, because the same plague has struck both you and your rulers. Make models of the tumors and of the rats that are destroying the country, and give glory to Israel's God. Okay? So again, while you're making these golden rats, Make sure you're giving glory to God. Oh, glory to God here, golden rat number one. Kind of this is for you. So that are destroying, give glory to is perhaps he will lift his hand from you and your gods and your land. And this is an interesting verse, verse 6 here. Why do you harden your hearts as the Egyptians and Pharaoh did? Okay, so again, boy, that the story about Egypt got around. Okay, and I mean, we're several generations past it, but it's still out there. Okay, it's still out there as far as what God did and something about that. They're like, okay, whatever we do, we're okay. We've had this one. We don't want 9 more. Okay, we got to nip this thing in the bud and get it out of here, so we don't have 9 more of those plagues. So he says, when Israel's God dealt harshly with them, did they not send the Israelites out so they could go on their way? So there are some who would suggest that this ark story, what's happening here, mirrors, reflects, shadows, pictures, the Exodus. This Egyptian thing that the ark is being exodused. Okay, they're sent out, being exodus. So just like the ark, just like you remember at the end, when the Israelites left Egypt in Exodus, it wasn't a happy departure. It wasn't a high five out the door and at Bolingbrook whenever a team wins any, they have a clap out. They line the hall and the band plays and everybody cheers and they go by. That wasn't how it was. It was like, get out of here. Get out. And on the way out, they were grabbing gold and stuff, they spoiling the Egyptians and all that. It was an ugly thing when they went out, kind of thing. And so now then, when Israel's God, did they not send the Israelites so they could go on their way? We need these. You just get out of here. Just get out. Get out. I mean, it was one of those kind of deals where sometimes you have something in your house or a person in your life that at some point you have to just say, just get out, just leave. No more, or you quit a job or you leave a relationship or whatever. I can't deal with this anymore. Okay, they just get out. We just need to get rid of this thing. Okay. Now then, getting new cart ready. New cart. Now, what did I say about the ark? How were they supposed to transport the ark? They're supposed to carry it. We're supposed to put it on a cart. Okay. With 2 cows that have calved and have never been yoked. Okay, so these are 2 cows who have recently given birth, okay, which makes these cows female cows, female, okay? So now they get a new cart ready with 2 cows that have calved and have never been yoked. Hitch the cows to the cart, but take their calves away and pen them up. Take the ark of the Lord and put it on the cart, and in a chest beside it, put the gold objects you are sending back to him as a guilt offering. Send it on its way, but keep watching it. So the Philistines are not 100% certain, at least the diviners are not 100% certain that all of this isn't just a coincidence. Okay, they're still kind of keeping their options open, sort of thing. And even though all of the rulers are saying, don't bring this into my town, people are dying, they've got these rats, they've got these tumors, all of this kind of stuff. They're still like, this may be an issue. But keep watching it. If it goes up to its own territory, toward Beth Shemesh, we'll get to that in a minute, then the Lord brought this great disaster on us. But if it does not, then we will know that it was not his hand that struck us, but that it happened to us by chance. So if you think about it, you've got two cows that have never been yoked. Okay, so they have not been broken to what it feels like to have. Now, I have no idea what it's like to break I don't personally know what it's like to break a horse either, but there are movies where they talk about breaking horses. I have never seen a movie where they talked about breaking a cow. But I got to believe that it's not a comfortable thing at first to put a yoke on a cow and say, go. That there's a period of time where they have to kind of teach it and train it and all that kind of. There's a period of training that has to happen. So these cows are being put in a yoke that they've never had, attached to a cart that they've never had to pull, that they've never had to do before. So they're being asked to do something that they've never done before, they've not been trained to do, they've not been conditioned to do. And furthermore, they're both cows that are recently calved, so they're producing milk. They'd be looking for their calves. So their natural tendency would be to go to where their calf is. So all things are that there's no way this is going to work. But their point is, the only way this is going to work if there is some divine mandate pulling them towards Beth Shemesh. Okay? So they did this. They took 2 such cows and hitched them up to the cart and penned up their calves. They placed the ark of the Lord on the cart, and along with it, then the chest containing the gold rats and the models of the tumors. Then the cows went straight up. It's interesting. So it's uphill. Not only they got to go uphill, so they got to work at this toward Beth Shemesh, keeping on the road, never leaving it, and lowing all the way. Okay? Somewhere in my life, I heard a sermon titled "Lowing All the Way." That somebody preached a sermon based on just that text. I don't remember. I've looked for that, and I can't find it. But lowing all the way, they're letting anyone who wants to listen know we're not happy about this. Okay, we're not happy about this, but clearly they don't have a choice. Okay, so they did this. Then the cows went straight up toward Beth Shemesh, keeping on the road and lowing all the way. They did not turn to the right or the left. The rulers of the Philistines followed them as far as the border of Beth Shemesh. So, I mean, the picture is you've got these poor cows pulling this cart, and all these rulers like walking behind. I mean, maybe at a safe distance, kind of walking behind. How far are they going? Yeah, are they still on the road? Yeah, they're still on the road. Are they still going? Yeah, they're still going. Kind of like, is this thing going to go? Is sort of like making sure this thing gets out of town. Now the people of Beth Shemesh were harvesting their wheat in the valley, and when they looked up and saw the ark, they rejoiced at the sight. Now Beth Shemesh is a city that was set aside in Joshua for Levites. Okay, now the Levites are the tribe that is to support and be the priesthood. Okay, now again, they weren't all priests. Some of them had to live in their houses and kids and all of that. And this is one of the, so this is a predominantly Levite city. So the people in Beth Shemesh of any city would recognize the cart for what it is. Okay? So they walk in and they see the cart. The ark's been gone for 7 months. They go, hey, look, coming up over the hill, those 2 noisy cows are pulling a cart. What's that? Oh, that's the ark. That's the Ark of the Covenant. Now the people of Beth Shemesh were harvesting wheat in the valley, and when they looked up and saw the ark, they rejoiced. The cart came to the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh, and there it stopped beside a large rock. The people chopped up the wood of the cart and sacrificed the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. Now there's a problem here. Now if you go back to Leviticus 1:3, again, this is Leviticus, Levites, Leviticus, that's not the tie-in, but so in Leviticus 1:3, the Lord is giving a little bit of, if the offering is a burnt offering from the herd, you are to offer a male without defect. Now, what kind of cows are these again? Gender? Female cows. Okay, so there's a little weirdness about this. I mean, and of course, it isn't really much of a sacrifice. Kind of getting into the definition of the sacrifice. If it doesn't cost you anything, it's not a sacrifice. So if I go out, steal the keys to a 2024 Porsche, which is my dream car, and pull it up here and give it to the church, say, here, I'm giving this to the church. Here are the keys to the car. You can do anything you want with it. Okay? And the church sells it, and then, oh yeah, great, Stan sacrificed his car. Like, no, I didn't. I stole the car. It's not my car. Right? It didn't cost me anything. That's kind of a side thing for me. But it says they stopped beside, they chopped up the wood of the cart and sacrificed the cows as a burnt offering. So they recognized the cart problem. The Levites took down the ark of the Lord together with the chest containing the gold objects and placed them on the large rock. On that day, the people of Beth Shemesh offered burnt offerings and made sacrifices to the Lord. The 5 rulers of the Philistines saw all this and then returned that same day to Ekron. Okay, so all right, it's back. They got it. It's back to them now. These are the gold tumors the Philistines sent as a guilt offering to the Lord, one each for Ashdod, Gaza, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron. And the number of gold rats was according to the number of Philistine towns belonging to the 5 rulers. The fortified towns with the country villages. And then here's another Old Testament fun fact. The large rock on which the Levites set the ark of the Lord is a witness to this day in the field of Joshua Beth Shemesh. Okay, which Debbie reminded me, we've been here. We've seen this rock. So where this occurred. Okay, so just kind of telling you, and this is sort of, when the guy who's putting this together is writing this, he's just pointing out, to this day, that rock is still there. That when it came back, they took it back on its rock. Okay? But God struck down some of the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh, putting 70 of them to death because they looked into the ark of the Lord. Okay? Other things you weren't supposed to do with the ark is like touch it. And if you can't touch it, you certainly can't open it. And so to look into it requires you to touch it. Now the question here is there is a little bit of a textual issue here, because some text, and the NIV goes with this one, says that it's 70 people died. Other manuscripts say that 50,070 people died over this. Okay? Which is it? I don't know. I mean, 70 is a lot. To 70 people who just, thought, oh, maybe, and again, maybe it was completely innocent. So innocent, yet they knew better. Oh, let's see if they left the commandments and Aaron's rod and the manna still in there, right? Wouldn't that make sense? It's been gone for 7 months. Let's see if they took any of the stuff out. 70, somewhere between 70 and 50,000 people died as a result. Okay, the people mourned because of the heavy blow the Lord had dealt them. And the people of Beth Shemesh asked, who can stand in the presence of the Lord, this holy God? To whom will the ark go up from here? So similar to the Philistines, the people of Beth Shemesh want to exodus the ark. They don't, let's not, if it were 50,000 that had died, there's probably not a lot of people left in the village. Probably if there were 70, these villages were not that big. So even if it were just 70, I doubt there's a lot of people left. And the people, to whom will the ark go up from here? Then they sent messengers to the people of Kiriath Jearim, saying, the Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord. Come down and take it up to your town. Now chapter 7, verse 1. So the men of Kiriath Jearim came and took up the ark of the Lord. They brought it to Abinadab's house on the hill and consecrated Eleazar his son to guard the ark of the Lord. The ark remained at Kiriath Jearim a long time, 20 years in all. Okay? Why doesn't it go back to Shiloh? Why don't they take it back to Shiloh? That's where it was originally. Okay? Well, we don't know. There's no explanation why it doesn't go back to Shiloh. The best explanation is that Shiloh doesn't exist anymore. Remember, the Philistines, there's this big battle. The Philistines, the entire Israelite army evaporates. They're fairly close to Shiloh, close enough that the ark can get there. Hey, let's go see what we can destroy. So the assumption is, the belief, the explanation, and it's really just speculation, is that the Philistines came through and destroyed Shiloh, because it's never mentioned again as the center of religious worship. And when David becomes the king, he moves the ark to, and moves everything to Jerusalem. Okay, but it stays there for 20 years. Okay, so think about this whole scenario. You've got the ark, this ark narrative. The Lord has, and I think at this point the message had to get across to as far as the message of what happened in the Philistia had to kind of get across to the Jews. Oh, hey, and then of course it comes in, and God isn't like relieved that the ark is back. The Lord isn't going, whew, finally, I'm out of there. He's like, hey, the rules still apply. Okay? Just because they haven't, the ark hasn't been here for 7 months doesn't get you guys off the hook. The rules still apply. Okay? You're going to carry the ark. You're not going to touch the ark. You're going to, put it back where it belongs. Find a tabernacle, build a tabernacle, put it where it belongs. And again, they consecrate somebody to guard it. Okay? And that's where it stays for 20 years. In the meantime, Samuel has taken over. Okay? And when we come back next week, we're going to see Samuel in charge. Any questions? Did I cover all of the things that kind of... The Philistines' plan is actually an elaborate test. Cart is headed to Beth-Shemesh. Levites are tribe that cares for the tabernacle. Upon seeing and receiving the ark, the people of that city chop up the cart, sacrifice the cows. Not a good thing. The rulers were watching. How many inhabitants died? We don't really know. At least 70. They want to exodus the ark. People of Kiriath Jearim take it. It stays in Abinadab's house under Eleazar's care. And again, these two guys, this is all we know from these two. They just have this one, it's not like, oh, this is the next in line for the priesthood. I mean, later we hear. But as far as these two are out of the blue, just here's two guys that took care of the ark for 20 years. Okay? Or Eleazar. I mean, to me, and it just sort of sets up, okay, there's been this upheaval because the religious center has been destroyed. The religious family, the leading religious family in Israel has been knocked down. Eli and his sons, and that whole line has been knocked down. And Samuel is left as the lone person in charge, and a good one. A good one. I mean, he's one of the greats in the Old Testament, and we'll see him kind of at his peak here in the next couple of chapters, chapter 7 when he comes in. But now it's 20 years later, 20, 30 years later. There's like a time gap. All right, see you next week.
No, you won't.
Oh no, yes, we won't. There's no ABF next week. Yes, yeah.
Not very stable.